Math 3, Unit 8, Module 4, Topic 1, Lesson 2, Practice. Determine whether each graph represents a periodic function over the interval shown. If so, identify the period p. Also determine the maximum and minimum values of the function. So remember, a periodic function has to repeat itself over and over and over again. So it has a cycle. So on the first one, that graph obviously keeps doing the same thing over and over again. It just keeps going up and down like a wave. And the period is how long it takes for the graph to complete one full cycle before it starts repeating itself. So I'm going to start at an x value of 0, and then I'm going up to an x value of 2. So the period is the large x value minus the small x value. So this is a 2, and this is a 0 for the x values. 2 minus 0 is 2. So the period would be 2. Other ways to visualize it, you could go valley to valley, so lowest point to next lowest point. This is an x value of -5. This is an x value of, I lied. It's not -5. If I look at my x-axis, it's going by halves. It's going by 0.5s. So that's actually -4.5. And then this x value would be -2.5. So just to show you another option, if I did my large x value, so -2.5, minus my smaller x value, -4.5, that would still get me the same period of 2. So that's how long it takes to do one full cycle. And then the last option, or last, at least easy option, you could go peak to peak. So highest point on the graph to the next highest point on the graph. So this is an x value of 2.5. This is an x value of 4.5. So I could do my large x value minus my small x value, and I still get 2. So any way you spin it, the period is 2. That's how long it takes to do one full cycle before the graph starts repeating itself again. They also want us to find the maximum and minimum. So for your maximum, you're just jotting down the largest y value. So basically right here, this is a y value of 2. And then for minimum, you just want the lowest y value. So that lowest y value is -2. On number 2, this graph has arrows showing that it goes up this way forever and then up this way forever. So this graph does not keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So it's not a periodic function. Since it's not a periodic function, we're not going to talk about the period, the max, or the min. We're just going to stop and say not a periodic function. Number 3, that graph obviously keeps going up and down and up and down and up and down. So yes, it is a periodic function. For the period, I'm going to start with peak to peak. So the largest x value is 8. So that right there has an x value of 8. And then the smallest x value is 0. So 8 minus 0 is 8. So that's how long it takes to complete one full cycle before the graph starts repeating itself again. The maximum is just your highest y value. So that looks like 3. And then your minimum is just your lowest y value. So that looks like -3. On number 4, that graph goes up forever on the left side, and then it goes down forever on the right side. So it does not keep repeating itself over and over. So it's not a periodic function. So we're not even going to bother talking about anything else because it's not a periodic function, so it doesn't have a period. Determine the period, midline, and amplitude of each graph. So on this one, let me zoom in a little bit. Period, midline, amplitude. So let me do the middle all the way up to the top, all the way down to the bottom, and then back up to the middle where we started. So this is an x value of 1. This is an x value of 0. So your period is the large x value minus the small x value. So the period is 1. then they want us to get the midline and the amplitude. So your midline is y equals the max plus the min divided by 2. You're simply averaging your max and min to figure out what's the spot right in the middle. So my maximum's up here at 3. My minimum is down here at -3. So 3 plus -3 divided by 2 is 0 divided by 2, which is 0. So my midline would be y equals 0. And you do need the y equals because it's an equation of a horizontal line. So it basically would be right there. That would be my midline. Last thing they want us to do is amplitude. So amplitude is 1/2 the absolute value of the maximum minus the minimum. So 1/2 absolute value of 3 minus -3. So 1/2 absolute value of 6 should be 3. And we can kind of double check that. This should be 3 units to go from my midline up to the top. Careful when you look at your y-axis, it goes up by 0.5s. So sure enough, this is 1, 2, 3. So that is correct. Number 6, same direction. So we want the period, midline, and amplitude. So for the period, I'm just going to go peak to peak. So it looks like 1 is my x value, and then 0 is my x value. So 1 minus 0 is 1. So you get one full cycle before the graph starts repeating itself over the x value of just 0 to 1, so that's 1. The midline is y equals the maximum value. So your maximum value is right up here. This is a y value of 4, plus your minimum value down here, that's a y value of -4, divided by 2. So that looks like it's going to be 0 again. So y equals 0 for the midline. And again, you need the y equals. Amplitude is 1/2 the absolute value of the max minus the min. Remember that double negative turns into a plus sign inside the absolute value bars. So you get 4 for your amplitude. And again, that should make sense to us. From my midline of y equals 0, let me color code that for us. So here's my midline, y equals 0. I go up 4 and I go down 4. So it all checks out. On 7, we have the graph of the periodic function shown, and then we're basically asked all the same stuff, just the formatting's a little bit different. So for the period, let's do, it's kind of hard to tell, but this graph I think has been shifted a little bit. So if I'm looking at the y-axis, you actually cross the y-axis. It almost looks like at -0.5. So I could go like this, and this should still work. Let's see, does that work? Yes. Oh, and it looks like I lost my labels off of that graph. That's too bad. They were there before. So this graph should have a label of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the x values. Let me double check my other key. And then my x values, I'm just going to have those go by 1s as well. Sorry, those labels got lost in translation. So we're going to have the x-axis go by 1 as well. So that green part there, it was an x value of 2 right here, and then an x value of 0. So for us to do one full cycle outlined in green right here, it was 0 to 2. So that's just going to be 2 for our period. I take my big x value minus my small x value, and I get 2. For the minimum, looking down here at the bottom, so that's negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So minimum value of negative 5. Maximum value up here at the top, so 1, 2, 3, 4. For my amplitude, I want to do 1/2 absolute value of the max minus the min, which is 1/2 of absolute value of 9, which is 4.5. So my amplitude should be 4.5. Midline is y equals the max plus the min divided by 2. So y equals negative 0.5 or y equals negative 1/2. So right here, negative 1/2, that would be my midline. It's 4.5 units to get up to the maximum from the midline, or it's 4.5 units to go from the midline down to the bottom, to the minimum value. And then that last one should be pretty similar. This one I didn't lose my labels off my graph. So for my period, let's do valley to valley. So my x value here is 2, x value here is 0. So big X value minus small x value is 2 minus 0, which is 2. So that's my period. Minimum is negative 3. So like right here, this is a y value of negative 3. Maximum's up here. So that's a maximum of 1, 2, 3, 4. So amplitude is 1/2 times the absolute value of the max minus the min. That double negative turns into a positive. So our amplitude is 3.5. And then our midline is y equals the maximum plus the minimum divided by 2. So y equals 1/2 or y equals 0.5. Either one is fine. So visually, here's my midline at y equals 1/2. It's 3.5 units to get up to the top from the midline, and then 3.5 units to get down to the bottom from the midline.